Can somebody give me a thumb up if you can hear me? Somebody was just saying they couldn't hear me. Anybody? Yep. Okay. Thanks, Dixie. To appreciate it. So, all right. There's Sarah. Welcome.
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry.
Good. No worries. It's all good. All right. I assume Gregory is on his way, coming from another meeting. Welcome, Sandra. Stixito, appreciate you as always being here and so attentive to Regen. Awesome. Well, we can slow walk into our conversation. So we've got a few things to cover today. There's a lot of places we could go. Governance is starting to heat up as we're both within Regen and even over in Klima, which I'm sure Bax can talk about here shortly. There is, as we're moving toward the end of the calendar year, there's a decentralization movement afoot, the next phase of it for Regen Network. What does that mean? How does it show up? What does DAO-ifying Regen mean? Like, what are the opportunities to create spaces and DAOs as organizations within Regen continue to define their roles, even to some degree, a little bit more narrowly in service to the network? And then in the latter half of the hour, Jake Hartnell from actually, I'm not sure what his parent organization is, but either way, Jake's going to be joining us to talk about cosmwasm, which is likely to land on chain if it hasn't already, and we're going to discuss like what that looks like. What are the opportunities around smart contracting on within Regen Network? Is DAO, which just the front end just went open source for people who haven't seen that, is obviously a potential candidate for permissioned cosmwasm to as a governance opportunity. But there's other really interesting use cases of cosmwasm, which we'll dig into as well, ideally. So I'm just inviting Gregory. Gregory, I just invited you up. Maybe to start us off, Bax, do you want to just maybe kind of give us a broad brush, your sense of the DAO-ification needs and opportunities, kind of where we're at now? And I'll just say, as for context, we just published a looking back article that I think gives a really interesting and really, in a lot of ways, as somebody who's been part of it since 2017, a really neat overview of our historical journey and how we've arrived here, and starts to look over the horizon a little bit about what's next for the Regen ecosystem. How might we look at these next chapters as not being written by I'd say a smaller group of folks in the early days, and really is going to be written by all of you. So, what does that look like? Maybe we can dig in. So, Bax, Gregory, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Maybe before we jump into the kind of DAO-ification, because it's going to open up a whole conversation, I just want to remind folks a couple of things that are in governance. One is the permissionless credit class proposal. Thanks everyone who participated in Gregory and I's polls, trying to get more data points about what the new credit class fee should be in that proposal. That is probably going to go up on chain for vote probably next week. We also just had a vote adopting a new credit type called Kilo Sheep Hour, related to the fiber shed grazing project that passed. So congrats to more credit types on chain. And then we'll talk about the cosmwasm proposal with Jake a little bit later. And it's just a general reminder that we have kind of an ongoing thread discussion around tokenomics, but I highly recommend that folks take a look at tokenomics and take a look at permissionless credit class this week, because it may actually, those things are going to be evolving quite quickly. So to switch back to the topic that you started with, Dave, we've been having a lot of discussions at various locations across the network with builders, starting to think about what it would be like to have cosmwasm, a smart contracting framework. You and I, Dave, thinking about network marketing, we already have a tokenomics working group led by Max, where R&D and Foundation and quite a few other organizations are, leaning into that discovery process. And what we're kind of realizing is, our community is really getting quite large. There's a lot of different people with a lot of different skills who really care very deeply about Regen Network, have been entrenched in the network in one way or the other for a really long time. And we've spent a lot of time at R&D thinking about our end users, our real land stewards on the ground, our scientists, our project developers, focusing on the software stack that serves their use case of restoring land and designing and creating assets and standards for that land, which is really our core purpose, is to restore that land. And now we're kind of at this juncture where we're kind of looking around at a much more robust network than we had 2 years ago and saying, okay, how do we think broader? How do we think about network growth as a distributed system of different organizations that can emerge where, their working groups or their DAOs and lots of different kinds of community members can lean in and be able to create by joining those DAOs and really have a broader set of regular participants with, financial support, hopefully, so that more people can be more creative more easily and more openly within Regen Network. So maybe I'll pass off to Gregory so he can kind of elucidate sort of where he thinks we're at right now. And then, maybe, Dave, I think it would be awesome to talk about, the marketing DAO we have in mind specifically, and to kind of touch before, Jake joins us at the half hour, around, the implication of, having a developer DAO and where we're at with Regen Ledger on 046, and, how we have the opportunity actually to, just like we've done on the project developer side, really create an incubated community of software developers to build on and around Regen Network at the next phase. So I'll pass over to Gregory to get some context setting.
Yeah, thanks. So let's see. I think there's a couple of different just pieces of framing that I think it's always great to start with. Again, all of these governance conversations and this process of this quite complex process of progressive decentralization, which can be filled with hazard and potholes along the way, because it requires a complex set of incentive alignments and user requirements. So I think starting with this like North Star is good, and then just digging into each of the different points that Sarah's making around what are these initiatives, these opportunities for leadership, for co-leadership in the network, and for the community to lean in and take agency to support the vision, which is and has always been a decentralized, community-owned digital infrastructure as a superior institution for payment for ecosystem services, carbon markets, biodiversity markets, and general human coordination to realign the economics of our society with the ecology of our biosphere. So from a sort of 30,000 foot perspective, what R&D, Regen Network Development Public Benefit Corp, the sort of the Genesis org and the core software team up until now that's been building Regen Ledger and other things, supporting community development, developing methodologies. What R&D believes is the sort of vision, is a system for progressive verification of ecological state to be linked with payments, so that citizen science, land stewards, local stakeholders can all be in the ownership seat for setting, governing, and monitoring standards, instead of having those standards be set, monitored, and governed by a bureaucracy that's a world away when a payment is going to a local farmer or a local indigenous community. Again, the theory here is that what is broken about the current market solutions for nature-based finance is that it's a top-down bureaucratic institution that is easily captured and manipulated, and therefore trust is degraded. And so the antidote to that is, and always has been, a deeply decentralized and user-owned community. The blockchain, an application-specific blockchain, is what's perfect for that. Okay, but here's the hazard. The hazard is that an app-specific blockchain requires both the right throughput to afford the infrastructure of that decentralization. That means we need to be originating and selling enough ecological assets to pay infrastructure operators, to pay for governance operators, to pay for verifiers, and make the whole system work. And if we're transparent, we have yet to achieve that. However, what's always been remarkably odd to me, we have probably the most real-world assets living on chain of potentially anywhere, although maybe KlimaDAO and Regen are sort of at some form of parity, at least in terms of what's been bought and retired, and certainly from a pipeline perspective of what's coming to the market, I think we're sort of at the lead. However, that's not sort of like on chain yet, and it's not, the transactions aren't sort of getting distributed yet to maintain the infrastructure. So we're at this really interesting moment as a community where what we're asking, to be fully transparent at R&D, is for our community to step up and into co-leadership and co-ownership in a bigger way than you already are engaged with, to help guide the next steps so that R&D can step away from a huge amount of the sort of coordination and infrastructure burden that we've been taking, so that we can focus on the origination pipeline, right? Because there's a huge amount of work to support the usability, the features, so that we can scale to project developers, land stewards, and scientists to be using this more advanced approach to digitally native ecological asset origination. Somebody's got to focus on that specific user group, and we need other user groups to engage and take leadership. Okay, so now getting to what Bax is inviting into in very specific points. So that means that marketing, for instance, we need a community, as osmosis has led the way, to take ownership of communication and marketing for a variety of different stakeholders, and we have the sort of the features. There is, of course, Regen budget, and I believe there will also be some small amount of stablecoin budget to get things going. And what's nice here is that there's an opportunity to market real assets, right, and make income from doing that. So that's cool. That's uncommon in the Web3 space. So that's number one, sort of this idea of community engagement around storytelling, communications, marketing, and sales. And I'm excited for Dave and Sarah, who in many ways have been the leaders of that effort, that very competently executed effort over the years, to talk about their vision and their ideas for how that's going to evolve. So that's number one. Number two is we need our quite diverse community of developers who don't belong to R&D to lean in and take agency around what the next evolution of the state machine is, of Regen Ledger, right? And we need a community of stakers to lean in and take agency over what the next evolution of the token economics is. And when those three things happen, there will be a phase shift of what Regen Ledger is and Regen Network is, in which we will have passed into the realm of full decentralization. Right now, we're in this moment of progressive decentralization with those three key quests that need to be accomplished together as a community, in order to achieve this end vision of a digitally native, community-owned digital infrastructure, this commons approach to ecological assets, to eco-crediting. which we, I think, as a community, all believe, if we don't achieve that, right, these carbon markets, these institutional, the sort of bureaucratic institutional approach will end up excluding farmers and land stewards and scientists and indigenous people from any engagement. And so you'll end up getting sort of the elite oligarchy setting standards and enforcing those standards, which isn't just sort of like a bummer. It's actually undermines confidence, legitimacy, and effectiveness of the market because local stakeholders know best and need to have the reins for any of these sorts of processes. That's empirically factual, right? So again, the big things that are going to, I guess, kind of like make or break the future of regen, the quest that we have in front of us is for engaged participation in developer engagement for the next upgrade for Regen Ledger. And as Sarah noted, there's very exciting movement to adopt cosmwasm as a permissioned VM on Regen Ledger. So that's where that lives. And we can link to that discussion. People can engage and developers can contribute. There's a forming developer DAO around that concept. There's the token economics working group, which is being led by our friend Max, which is an independent community-run group to assess different token economic designs and propose them to the community in an effective and efficient way, right? And there's the marketing DAO, which is the shift of and decentralization of communications so that we can appropriately tell the story as a community instead of just as R&D. And these are enormously exciting, although you wouldn't know it by the current Twitter turnout. I love all of you who are here. There is actually a lot of engagement, signal channels and telegram channels and things happening and moving. We tend to always just be scattered across all these different channels, but that's by kind of like context setting and sort of like connecting us back to the bigger North Star and like, where are we as a network? Where is R&D, Public Benefit Corp, and why are these three initiatives so important? So now I think it's probably a good time to kind of maybe revert back. And over the course of this conversation, we did do a kind of a bit of a deep dive on the token economics one. I don't think we're going to talk about that so much in this Twitter space. I think for the rest of this next 10 minutes, I think it'd be awesome, Sarah, for you and Dave to just dig in and engage and talk us through the sort of marketing DAO concept, what you're thinking about, how you're thinking about it, and anything else where you guys kind of as community members are sort of like proposing something. And then as Jake hops on, we can dig into cosmwasm. And I think kind of also, in addition to the sort of, network upgrade, I think there's going to be a really lively conversation at that point around these concepts of nested governance, where we're using DAO or groups module to govern for the right stakeholders to govern specific features. So I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to pass the talking stick over to Sarah, and let's go from there.
Awesome. Thanks for the context setting, Gregory. Yeah, so I mean, I think Dave and I can uniquely speak to marketing DAO, which is a concept that we're going to put forth a discussion about over the next few weeks for this distinct DAO, as well as we're going to be doing some gathering as an ecosystem and talking about the list of DAOs that we think, should exist, whether they are going to arise right now or not. We want to also kind of have a broader discussion with the community about the patterning of DAOs and, what we collectively think is going to be necessary. I think there's things in a marketing DAO that would be really, really valuable, frankly. One, the Regen Network handle is the protocol and communities communication forum here on Twitter. Managing that as a DAO and allowing for a more open process of community members to submit requests, I think would make the process of communicating what's happening across the entire network beyond R&D much more viable. I also think that from a wayfinding perspective, things like the guides and to some extent the technical ledger docs and the ability to communicate who's building on Regen, what are they building. These types of assets, working towards a clearer website for the broader ecosystem that showcases what the ecosystem is, the ecosystem access points, user guides, technical docs, tools, stuff that everybody should have really open access to. There's an opportunity for like a wider set of ecosystem storytelling if that content kind of lives in its own space. And then from the perspective of R&D as the genesis organization of the protocol itself, having created and spun up the protocol for it to then be decentralized, there are some things that R&D just can't talk about in an open way, including, Regen token, where is it listed, is it valued? There's some limitations for legal reasons about how we could talk about that. And having a marketing DAO would also allow for us to have a narrative around what is the governance token? What is it used for? Why does it reflect the economy and the participation level of the network at large? And why does it have value beyond just being a staking token with the name of Regen associated to it? So there's like new opportunities that could exist in a marketing DAO. As well as I think that there's lots of community threads and community storytelling and community ideas that having a marketing DAO that, has the opportunity to also be creative in its work, like design creative, artistic creative, would just open up a lot of opportunities for new people to come in and be part of our collective storytelling. So, Dave, I'd love to hear kind of like your personal opinion around like what else marketing DAO could serve at a pattern level, and also from a cultural perspective, like what would you love for like weird and wonderful marketing DAO to feel like, Dave? Because you and I have like the vibe all the time and so much fun in the work that our team does together. So I would also just love for people to like have access to that vibe and be like, yeah, we get to create all these cool things together. Let's be creative. And a lot of that work is not super public and not super seen, but it's the place to be, in my opinion. So I'd just love to hear your opinion as well.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to share. I think, I'm of two minds, or several minds, I guess, but, one mind, as like a longtime marketing communications professional, and and DAOs working, in the same, as a vehicle for that space. I have, frankly, a bunch of like just questions of like how we properly activate it and provide accountability and quality assurance, and and buy-in, essentially, like why are people going to want to participate, like how do we get people excited, engaged, and bought into this concept, which I think is critical to the future of the network, right? It's a publicly governed ecological ledger, and it is time for it to fly with the community. And the part, I guess, that excites me is thinking that transparently, it has been Bax and I, and a few other folks who've largely directed the communications and the narrative, the brand development, the tone, the voice of the Regen ecosystem, at least from the channels that are controlled by have been controlled by R&D for quite some time. And I think we've done a solid job. I think everything looks professional. It's everything is. I think we do well, and I think we haven't done a good job, which I'm excited about, in the DAO concept of really surfacing the talents and the stories and the agency of the community to use Regen Network as a vehicle for storytelling about ecological regeneration and how to use this tech stack, which is in its current at this point, after years of development, is in a state to really be exploited in the best way possible by a global set of ecological advocates to serve regeneration at the bioregional level, at the watershed level, at the international level. So how we can tell that story both at the, I guess, kind of like at that watershed level and at the kind of meta 30,000 foot view level, by engaging and kind of unpacking the stories on the ground and from the people who are already active around Regen Network, I think is probably one of the more exciting things that I'm eager to figure out how to do that well. How to do that well is something I think is again, even inviting people here today to start thinking about what does that look like to co-create stories of ecological regeneration.
Yeah, and I mean, on that lens, when I was in Lisbon with John Ellison from Refi DAO, we had this like very extensive conversation about like the need to actually like go around to these real projects, take real film, develop real storytelling, and really create a more like enriching and immersing digital environment to understand the impact of these projects. Like, and that's something that he's like exploring kind of doing in the future. So like when I think about marketing now, I think about just the creativity also to just like work with other creators, which for me is like what makes me happy, frankly. And I mean, you touched on brand, Dave. Like we've had a billion brand discussions. The like brand guide is from, a wonderful human who's very, very early on in the brand, and we've, worked with it, but like brand and really up leveling the visual identity of Regen as a protocol and our work and all of that visual identity underpinning the assets and the app and other things is something I've been like itching desperately to work on for over a year. So like when I think about marketing DAO, I also think about like how do we start to work with brand and creative professionals of really high quality that we could bring in, we could contract in, we could really do some of this up leveling that I do think serves the protocol itself, but also serves every creator on the protocol. So I just think there's kind of like infinite possibilities when you sort of release marketing as a creative engine out to the community and let lots of people come and collaborate around it. And that gets me really, really excited. It's 8:30. Ooh, we've got more people that have showed up, including Jake. Good morning, Jake. So maybe we could switch over to talking with Jake about cosmwasm and then dig into the developer DAO concept. That's sort of Regen Ledger, app builder, developer DAO that we're starting to incubate and organize lately. So I think it's a good time to transition. So you want to take over, Dave, and chat with Jake?
Yeah, pardon me, Jake. I've sent you an invitation. To there you go. Jake, cosmwasm is being considered by the Regen community. You obviously have played a critical role in the kind of proliferation of cosmwasm. Maybe you could start by kind of framing up what is cosmwasm, and then and what the opportunities are around it, and then as a permissioned application, within Regen, what are some of the opportunities that you see that it could bring to Regen's ecosystem?
Sure. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I just woke up. Cosmwasm is awesome. It's basically smart contracts. So, you know how like in Ethereum, there's this like EVM thing, and everyone can easily copy and paste like code that other people write and just like deploy it on their blockchains, and suddenly it's like they have like a real developer community. It's early. I'm sorry if my jokes are gonna fall really flat, but smart contracts are really cool because they allow for this like really awesome, reuse of functionality. And it's really like, in the Cosmos SDK, we have our Cosmos SDK modules, and you get reuse of functionality, but then you also get a lifetime of having to maintain and upgrade that stuff. It's a lot of work. The great thing about smart contracts is they're much more stable, like the Uniswap V1 contract is still somewhere on Ethereum, just doing its job as it always did. And there's no you can upgrade them, but there's not really a need to like upgrade them or maintain them. So really, I think the advantage of cosmwasm, which is the sort of like smart contract framework of choice for much of Cosmos. There's over 30 chains that support cosmwasm at the moment. And there's all sorts of different kinds of applications, from like NFTs to DeFi to like basic kind of like utility sort of contracts like payment splitters or escrow contracts. You've got DAO tooling, obviously. You got all the NFT stuff, like, and so there's this wide array of functionality that you have a chance to bring to Regen Network for the very low cost of just uploading it through a governance proposal. Cosmwasm has something that the EVM doesn't support. There's two versions of it. There's permissionless Cosmwasm, which is like pure anarchy, like Juno. And then you have permission Cosmwasm, which is much more like the App Store kind of model. So like Osmosis and Stargaze use these models to great effect. I would advocate for the App Store model. I think you want people like to be sort of vetted when they're like deploying applications or new functionality onto Regen Network. But yeah, I guess to sum it up, what is cosmwasm? It's a smart contract framework. Simple as that. Why is it cool? It means it's more easy for developers to extend like the functionality of Regen Network, and not necessarily have to get buy-in from the core team managing the core software. Like some outside, organization can just build like a really cool new, like, I don't know, NFT tree project or something, and then they can just do it and deploy it.
Hey Jake, I have a question. Can you maybe speak to a little bit some of the, like, give us some like case studies of how cosmwasm has been deployed as a pattern level opportunity for Regen. And I think I'd say both within the Cosmos ecosystem for like interacting with other Cosmos chains, and cross ecosystem, like working, being able to connect in with other chains like Solana, or an Ethereum chain, or elsewhere. Like what are the opportunities? What are the kind of challenges there? Why is it a superior technical integration that may solve some of the issues that we're facing now with heavy developer time required, particularly from the core teams that cosmwasm may help resolve?
I think you just have to do less, right? Because you can rely on external developers more. I think there's probably many ways to look at this, and I'm sorry, it's really like early. I'm not the sharpest at the moment. I haven't even had coffee yet. Gasp. But like, I think from Regen's perspective, there's like not a lot of like resources to develop like custom functionality in apps. So like DAO tooling, for example, is something that's near and dear to my heart. And it can get really, really complex, right? So lately in Juno, we've been working on this new sort of chart. We're calling it the Juno Charter. It's like the precursor to the Constitution. We wanted to like take first stab, but it's pretty complicated. We have this whole like veto kind of system, and there's like different types of like checks and balances on the various different sub DAOs that comprise the Juno network. And well, if Regen wanted to do something similar, right, for its DAO structure, guess what? All that code's already written in DAO, and you could just deploy it yourself using cosmwasm. And so you'd get all this really advanced like sort of governance functionality kind of for free. And I think that that's kind of the like idea, is that it's just more easy to build on top of Regen Network, and it's more easy to leverage the work of others in the Cosmos ecosystem, whose work will like also benefit Regen Network. In terms of connecting to other blockchains, did you know that the Polkadot bridge is a Wasm-like client running in cosmwasm? So I think there is this element that like cosmwasm also provides this kind of like playground where we can like start building these new types of bridges. In many ways, one of the things you can do with cosmwasm, which I think we're going to see more examples for in the future, is you can verify ZK proofs using many of the great Rust libraries that are out there. Guess what? All the cryptographers, what language they use Rust. And so you can just use Rust code in cosmwasm and like bring it to your Cosmos chain. So if you have a verifier that verifies, I don't know, like a ZK proof from like Ethereum or like some EVM chain, like great. It's really easy for you to just have that like in Rust, in your smart contract and be able to like, you know, verify a ZK proof from like an EVM chain like Ethereum. Like that's really cool. It doesn't work with Go. Not yet. I mean, it probably will. It probably could, but like, it's just like also like how much work. Where do you guys want to be spending your work? Do you want to be spending your work developing custom SDK modules that you'll have to upgrade every time, or do you want to just spend work on doing the mission? And I would say the latter is much more important.
And Jake, is there anything to know about security around cosmwasm? Like, what's the security wrap around cosmwasm? Like, how is it being continually battle tested and upgraded?
I mean, cosmwasm has been battle tested from the beginning. There was this, I don't know if you ever heard of this project called Terra. It got to like over $100 billion in market cap and was doing insane volume like at the time, and its entire DeFi apparatus and stack was all built with cosmwasm for the most part. Now, they had terrible economics design. It wasn't a smart contract bug or whatever that collapsed Terra. It was just the fact that the economics were not bad. So it's not going to protect you against bad tokenomics. But it has been battle tested in like, you know, like very like large value environments for a while. I mean, and I think one of the things that we've seen as well is that permissioned cosmwasm is insanely safe. You cannot think of one instance where permissioned like cosmwasm has been hacked, right? Because it like in order to upload like a smart contract to the chain, you have to go through governance or get approved by governance to upload smart contracts to the chain. And that usually results in like quality, and no bad actor can like not just like upload some malicious thing to your chain. So that is like insanely safe. And then I, you know, as someone who's run like a permissionless network for wow, almost 2 years now, is like, you know, we've also had some, you know, challenges, right? We were attacked like twice, but you know, things still running today, and every time there's something like that happens, you know, it gets upstreamed and we fix it for future versions. But again, I wouldn't recommend like permissionless cosmwasm for Regen Network. I think but yeah, I think the permissioned cosmwasm is safer than writing custom SDK modules, guaranteed. And the reason is like when you write a custom SDK module, you are effectively dealing with like this metaphor might fall flat for some people, but like kernel like level access. You have access at the lowest level. It's like spaghetti code. Any module can touch the state of any other module. So if I like am writing my custom module and then I get access to the bank module, well, guess what? I can now modify anything in the bank modules, right? And so it could be like, you know, completely unintentional, right? Like some developer could just like accidentally like, you know, make a bug or whatever. But all that stuff is Cosmos SDK stuff is way more dangerous than writing a cosmwasm smart contract, because cosmwasm smart contracts are nice and sandboxed. It's really kind of a great design, and I think that we should say no to Cosmos SDK modules and say yes to reusable and modular smart contracts. Sorry, that was a rant.
That was great. Gregory, you've been following this debate for quite some time around cosmwasm and seen it evolve. Anything lighting you up around the potential of permission cosmwasm within Regen? Anything you want to particularly call out as a use case or a flag?
Well, I mean, I think the use cases are many, you know, so the use cases, again, in a way to kind of reiterate what Jake is saying, you know, number one, it allows us to adopt on Regen both the sort of smart contract functionality as well as a nice set of tools for open source interfaces for new things that I think are pretty important to evolve functionality, open functionality for land stewards and projects, right? An NFT module, DAO, some just basic things, which, for a variety of reasons have been challenging for R&D to prioritize as a single team doing many different things. And again, we sort of started today, and there's a lot of people we started this conversation today, and I would really encourage people to go back and listen to the recording of this Twitter space for sort of like my overview of the context and the process of progressive decentralization that's underway right now, and the why and the how of that. But so one of the most important things is making it possible for users to get creative functionality now for regenerative projects. So however we accomplish this, I believe we need to put it easily at the fingertips of users to be able to fundraise with an art collection or sell produce or start collecting data and have micro eco credit sales to just a local community for fundraising. All of these things which are not the same as producing institutional grade carbon credits or biodiversity credits, which is where a lot of R&D's core team energy has gone to for a variety of reasons, for better or worse. But we can't create a democratized platform by solely focusing on institutional adoption. But at the same time, we can't there's this paradox, we can't build a truly transformative network unless we have both grassroots features and functionalities as well as institutional credibility and adoption. Like we need both of those. And in order to achieve both of those, we need a strong developer community and a strong creative centrifuge and synergy. And like the things at the top of my mind that I'm personally excited to lean into and be leveraging our NFT module to mint on Regen and then move via IBC over to Stargaze or other markets.
I have thoughts on this NFT module. It's
yeah,
I would say the largest NFT marketplace in Cosmos doesn't use the NFT module. Why do we have another module that has to be maintained? Guess what? Most of the the Stargaze outpost code when it's going to be coming, cosmwasm, great, interesting. Why do we always gravitate towards more modules which will have to be maintained when there's perfectly great set of smart contracts and tools for you can mint an NFT with smart contracts like they do on Secret Network, like they do on Stargaze, like they do on Juno Network, like they do on Terra. There's a whole library of contracts and UIs and integrations around that stuff. And it's not necessarily something you have to maintain. I really do think that less is more, and that especially in really hard times like bear markets, and I'm saying this out of love, by the way, I really love what you guys are doing, but especially in hard times like bear markets, we have to focus on the core mission, the fundamental problem that's really unique for you guys, issuing credibly awesome ecological assets, and really just bringing together all these different components to serve the higher purpose. And so I guess NFTs are great. I totally agree that there's a lot of cool stuff that the Regen community could do with NFTs, and being able to mint them and sell them and do all this fun stuff. And I think cosmwasm can provide a lot of that. And don't add another module that you just have to maintain. That's another module you'll have to upgrade to 47. That's another module you'll have to upgrade to 50. Just like, it's not core to the mission, in my opinion. And you can also tell me that I'm wrong, and that's completely fair. So
Yeah,
And
I think I'm not, when I use the word module, I wasn't actually referring to an SDK module. I should have
well, I
used
just
the
went on a
term.
rant, and I'm really sorry, Greg.
No, it's all good. But it's probably good for the
but
audience.
I feel like
So
it's
I think
relevant
you're
to the
trying
commonly,
to.
topic.
I think you should
commonly,
explain the challenge with 046 versus 047 versus 0.5 too, Gregory, which is an impediment that we need to address to be able to adopt cosmwasm here too.
yeah. Well, no, I mean, I don't know that we need to. I don't know. I don't think I'm the right person to address that. I do think there are some non-trivial technical um, um, questions to ensure that we have secure cosmwasm um, running on Regen Ledger and the appropriate versioning decision. And while they're non-trivial, I don't think any of them are insurmountable. And I think people can go to the Commonwealth Forum, and there's been great questions by Cambium, by Paul from Cambium. There's other sort of like there's technical
I should
discussions
probably
there.
look at those.
Yeah, Jake, if you
You
To
don't
be
mind.
should,
honest,
Jake.
like I'm not. I think there's a decision that has to be made on 46 versus 47, because if that's like it's almost a separate question from cosmwasm. We can do both. 47 would be slightly preferable. It's more of like what does the team have like other reasons for wanting to move to 47, of which there are some. I wouldn't solely base this decision on like the cosmwasm part. That's relatively trivial. There is a version of cosmwasm that supports 46, and so that could definitely be like used, and it's been used like safely by other chains like the Migaloo chain from the White Whale team. um, and so it's doable either way. It's really not that hard. But there is a decision. The harder thing is whether or not the team wants to do 47 or not, because I'll try to like wrangle some people to like make cosmwasm on Regen like sort of happen, but only want to do that once.
Totally. So I think if you don't mind, Jake, just having a quick look at the technical questions that were raised there that are primarily around the versioning and choices there. I'll definitely make sure that Ryan, who's our Ledger dev lead, and Corey and others also engage there. I think that's the right place to have sort of the long form technical discussion. And of course, we can also specifically host a Twitter Spaces that is a technical deep dive in the questions and hashes those things out and kind of like gets it on public record. That's all good. I'm certainly not the right person to really have an opinion about that, other than I want it to be safe, and I want us to have access to a more modular, faster development cycle that is more open, so that more people can contribute and build than we're currently capable of doing for a variety of reasons. So we just need to shift the paradigm, and that's what's underway. So I'm personally excited and sort of like I'm in support of, as long as it's technically as long as we achieve technical consensus among the stakeholders, I'm super excited about this next step. One question I have, actually, while we've got you, Jake, is what are the, give me your pros and cons for a chain like Regen. What are the pros and cons of us adopting cosmwasm over Ethermint, for instance, to have an EVM, given the adoption of the EVM in the larger refi sector? Is there a permission version of Ethermint? And what are the performance sort of wins that cosmwasm achieves over the EVM approach to smart contracting?
I mean, cosmwasm as a virtual machine versus the EVM is much more performant by like a few orders of magnitude. And this is why we can do things like ranked choice voting in DAO all in smart contracts. Doing that in the EVM, where you have like much more like limited compute is I have a, I'm hesitant to say things are impossible, um, but it's incredibly challenging. Same thing with like IBC stuff, doing things like client like verification in the EVM versus WebAssembly is uh, very, very difficult. I won't say it's impossible, but it's very challenging.
And
But
crazy
a friend of
follow-up
mine did a
question.
benchmark, which was like basically like, a lot of people look at performance in terms of like TPS, but we should also look at performance in terms of compute. So my friend did this benchmark between Solana's VM, EVM, a Polkadot substrate module, and cosmwasm for the largest Fibonacci number that you could compute, controlling for a bunch of factors like gas and accounting for gas and like things like that. And cosmwasm just like blew away the competition. Like it's almost as good as a Cloudflare worker, because WebAssembly has been highly optimized from the beginning for performance. Uh, in terms of using Ethermint, for example, you'd have to talk with the team that makes it, right? Because they have a whole licensing scheme around it, so it's not necessarily free to use in the same way. That could be a potential option for sure. And you could also have both if you really
Right.
wanted to.
Well, that's what that was gonna be my follow-up question is, I commonly think, and a lot of this is like speculative from an adoption and economic perspective, but just being honest, a huge, like the Ethereum community, broadly inspired by Regen's leadership, is kind of all in on refi. And there's all sorts of, I mean, my critique would be there's a lot of motion, there's a lot of sort of noise and not that much signal, right? But that's how things, the froth and the movement and all those things happen. We are constantly thinking, how do we interoperate most smoothly? How do we bring people to us? How do we bring a strong community that has solidarity and mutuality and contributes to the commons so that we actually succeed? And I oftentimes wonder, is the EVM is providing an EVM because of cultural affinity and domain and application affinity something we should be thinking about? And up until now, we've been
Yeah,
thinking,
totally. I would actually be.
IBC. We've been more leaning like IBC and Evmos and partnerships, but at some point there may be a case for just having the VM. And so that's a long preamble to the question, which is it possible for a chain to just be rocking the EVM and cosmwasm as a VM at the same time?
Yes, totally. I think that is very doable. Again, you would have to, talk with the team that maintains Ethermint. They did change the license around it, but yes, it's very possible, and it's something I actually, you can actually run the EVM inside of Wasm, and one of the things I have planned for the future is I think this will happen maybe sooner than some people might think, but having a Cosm having the cosmwasm VM also support the EVM.
Right. That's what I was going to wonder, is like to the degree to which, because Wasm is so.
I think in an ideal world you could have both, right? Because there is a lot of great stuff that's in cosmwasm. It's all the IBC stuff has been a lot more built out in cosmwasm. So things like mesh security, new Wasm light clients, including some people are even working on light clients for like EVM stuff. You can take advantage of both, right? In many ways, if I was CTO of Regen, I would say no to any other custom NFT module or custom SDK modules that are not core to the business, and definitely leveraging like smart contract virtual machines, WASM, and EVM to like build out like user-facing products and being able to leverage all this existing developer ecosystem.
That's
Uh,
that's my opinion in a nutshell, essentially. And I think we've basically have hit and are at a place, maybe with there's arguable there might be some things to build out as Go modules, but they should be done rarely, extraordinarily rarely, and with a lot of forethought about why. And I totally agree. I mean, I think the data module, the credit module, marketplace module, working together with the group module gives us what like the minimum viable application specific functionality that drives what we understand to be this origination and marketplace, integrated origination and marketplace system for ecological assets. But then we're missing all of these other creative features and application user experience tools that I think we need to leverage. I'm excited about cosmwasm, and I'm excited to hear you talk about, which I've known is a technically possible, but it's always been a question: when might something like this happen? The ability to embed, an EVM system inside of the WASM virtual machine that's exciting, and that feels right, because it gives us all of the modularity, extensibility, security, and usability to multiple developer ecosystems. So it's super exciting. So again, I think at this
Yeah, I'm
point,
actually supportive of EVM on Regen as well. I
yeah,
think that WASM could be done quicker, but again, I don't know how much the Ethermint team. It's definitely worth reaching out to them for sure. And I think
We've
that
talked
the
about it.
point is having smart contract virtual machines, or a virtual machine where you can figure out which one is best for you. That is the main point I'm trying to convey here, which is like it allows people to build functionality like NFTs, like leveraging existing like awesome DAO tooling, like all the stuff that creator like will help people more easily extend the Regen network. Like what if I have a really like fun idea for like an NFT tree project? Like, oh wait, Cosmos SDK module, NFT module doesn't really support like really customized like kind of NFTs in the same way that you can do in smart contracts, right? Like if you look at something like all the rich NFT ecosystem of Ethereum, or what's possible in cosmwasm, you can create these like much more customized like kind of like NFT like sort of experiments. Like my friend Primavera is working on this. Well, I'm helping her with her art project called Aminols, and they are on-chain life forms that can't be owned by anyone. They're technically NFTs, but they sort of exist by themselves. And it's kind of like the idea that like the rivers or the forests or trees, they're their own entities. We might think we own them because they fall on our property or whatever, but um, you know, so there's a lot more to play around with, and it's just about giving, the regen community tools to more easily extend what this chain and what the community can do. And smart contract VMs, whether it's the EVM or whether it's WASM, just really like allow for this.
side note, let's jam on that in person. um,
Yeah,
We
let's
can
do
get
it.
uh,
P to come to Regen Gathering. She's invited. We need
um,
to bother her
um,
to come.
I'm gonna just call. We're at the top of the hour. We have just been blessed by Jake's wisdom and excitement about cosmwasm. I'm pretty excited about following up on this conversation with Ethermint, and the idea of EVM on Regen has long been something I've been mulling over. So in this moment of progressive decentralization, it's a great moment to be exploring and thinking about together. Jake, thanks so much for getting up early and jamming with us sans coffee. You're a hero.
I apologize to people that had to listen to that.
No, it was all coherent, remarkably so. I don't know that I could have pulled it off. So I'm gonna go ahead and just give you a big shout out and thanks. Point everybody who wants to sort of like dig deeper or make comments to the Commonwealth Forum. It's one of the latest ones. If you go to Regen Commonwealth Forum, you'll see it right there. This is the idea of bring cosmwasm to Regen. There's also there's a lot going on over in the governance forum. I would just fully invite everyone who's interested to spend a little time reading through and contributing, whether you have a strong opinion or you need more information to form an opinion, or whatever. That's a great place to engage in the long form dialogue that we continue to believe sets the tone for community ownership of this type of digital infrastructure. And we at Regen, I'm going to get on my soapbox for just a second before we conclude. We at Regen have, I think, in a way, this is going to sound weird, but the crypto space and the world is looking at us. In many ways, people consider Regen Network to be the adults in the room when it comes to many facets of this emerging application of Web3 to regenerative finance, ecological restoration, and governance. And whether they're right or wrong about us being the adults in the room is only going to be, true if we lean in and engage with the governance process together. Whether that's contrarian or in agreement, this is the moment that we're going to either co-own and out-cooperate the competition to build like this miracle of a decentralized network that essentially was given birth without VC capital, without um, weird incentives to be a plausibly neutral application and domain specific place for deep regenerative application of Web3, or we'll prove people that are naysayers about the grassroots community ability to pull something like that off. There are people who don't believe we can do that, right? Who believe that you need some big moneyed sugar daddy to push everything through, and that all of this decentralization talk is just a bunch of blather. There are people who believe that, and many of those people, unfortunately, sort of have Web3 personas, right? And I'm so motivated right now to prove them wrong. But the paradox here is that my motivation isn't what's important. It's actually this moment of, is the community motivated in the same way that we at R&D are to build this deeply democratic approach to ecological based economics? So that's my little soapbox moment. Thanks for listening, everybody. And, hasta la regeneración siempre, as they say.
Right on. Thank you, everybody. I do want to flag on Wednesday morning next week, Loa Labs Validator is going to be hosting a governance call for anyone interested in just jumping in and talking about all the governance that's moving around, cosmwasm, permissionless credit creation, the token economics conversations that are happening. Anyhow, we're going to hold an hour. It's going to be on Regen Discord, so please join us. We'd love to have you. And then Bax, you want to close us out and send folks away?
Yeah, big thanks to Jake for getting up early. I hope you made that coffee I bought you. I'm excited about all these governance proposals. It's going to be great. And there's one more y'all should be aware of that I just tweeted about. We have a new proposal on Klima to accept Regen Registry as one of its list of approved registries as part of charting towards cross-chain, interchain, superchain interoperability with all the climate projects wherever they are. So I also recommend that folks take a look at that discussion, which is happening over in their forum. And that really just focuses on, should they add Regen Registry as a list of registries that are allowed to be used with their systems and their tools and their applications? We think yes, because our credits are amazing. And we're going to be going through some similar processes with other communities of adopting Regen Network on platforms, both Web 2 and Web 3 formally through the next 6 months. So there are more avenues for the eco credits to get out to market. So this is just one of many discussions with communities and partners that we do also hope that folks will lean into beyond our governance forum. That one is in the Clean It Out forum. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. And I'm standing in front of plants and under trees, and that's the perfect place to start our day. So we appreciate you, and thanks for tuning in this morning.
Thanks, everybody. Be well.
Later.